Thanks, Vala, and good morning, everybody. I want you to note that when Vala was talking about lunch, he said pizza, salad, and pop. That is a Western PA way to say soda. So, thank you, Vala. Made me feel at home.
Yes, I will never forget my home.
So, I want to just talk a little bit about what and why we're here today. What are we doing and what are we going to talk about? Well, obviously, the whole day is focused around Rotary's action plan. So we're going to talk about where it came from, why we need one, what the hell is it, what do our clubs do with it, and then a call to action. So you will see that during the course of the day, people will be saying some things, and it might be the same thing that someone said earlier, but said in a different way. That's intentional. That's intentional because we want the learning and the information that we share with you today to hit home. So, how many of you had an opportunity to read the August Rotary magazine? That's you. Yeah. It was devoted to, of course, membership, but there was an interesting insert of articles, one of them talking about what happens, with Rotary culture, and there was an insert, and there were 4 different people who talked about their own club, and one talked about, well, if your club isn't what you want, go out and create a new one. And then another one talked about your projects, if people are in your club because they want to serve, man, your projects better have some punch. And then another one talked about, you want to listen to what your members want to do, and if what they want to do is fellowship and connection, then you've got to amp up your social activities and make sure they're happening. And then the 4th one, from the Rotary Club of Halifax Harbor, Nova Scotia, one of our irresistible clubs in the world, talked about how important it is to have fun. And all of those are really true. If those things aren't happening, no wonder people are going out the back door. So today is really talking about a tool that we have to help clubs look at themselves. And this is a tough thing for Rotarians to do, because in my experience, and this is just me speaking, not any other senior leader, a lot of our Rotarians are lazy, and they don't want to take the time to do it. They want somebody else to do it. It's not my job to figure out membership. We have a membership chair. There's somebody in the district. There's somebody at the zone. But the reality is, it's all of our responsibility. So this tool that we're going to talk about today addresses some of the ways we can help clubs look at that. The other part of that article, that magazine, that was interesting to me was the page that talked about what matters most to people when they join Rotary. And I was zeroed in on the very bottom, when it says, why do people leave clubs? And more than half of them said they left their club because it didn't represent what they were looking for. There was no value. They came into the club looking for something specific and they couldn't find it. Another 47% said there really wasn't good community engagement. 36% said cost. And that's an important one to me. I'm sensitive to how expensive Rotary can get sometimes. I'm very sensitive to that. And then 33%, this one floors me. They left because of conflicts in the club and with other members. If we're an organization built on world understanding and peace, and we don't even have peace in our own clubs, how's that work? Okay? And then the other one was time. So I thought those were interesting. But let me go back to what I said we were going to talk about today. And let's talk about where this all came from. Okay, how many of you have been in Rotary for 20 years or more? Okay, what have we been hearing for 20 years? Yeah, we have 1.2 million members, we have 1.2 million members, we have 1.2 million members. It never seems to move the needle, all right? The reality is, Rotary brings in 150,000 members every year. But the other part of that reality is we lose 160,000 members every year. We have a revolving door. We have a bleed. All right, that's why we're not growing. So Rotary said around 2015, 16, we need to get serious. We need to quit talking about it, and we need to act on it. So they created a joint strategic planning committee. And what joint means is that half of the people are appointed by the board of directors, and half are appointed by the board of trustees, and then they find somebody to chair it. And that was my role. So the very first thing we did, we sat around tables like this in Evanston, and we looked at each other and said, we're not writing a single word of this plan. And we did not. The plan came from you and Rotarians and non-Rotarians and former Rotarians and Rotaractors and Interactors and Rylarians. Anybody for whom we had contact information was invited to share ideas about what's going to move us into a thriving future. So we did several things as a committee. We did the typical things that you would do in a strategic planning process, research. Those of you who have done strategic planning, you know that SWOT analysis stuff, strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats. But then we reached out to all those groups I mentioned, and we did surveying. And we did focus group. Now focus group is a little different than a survey. In a survey, it's individual. You sit in front of a computer or you sit with a paper and pencil and you answer. But focus group is different. You get 6, 8, 10 people in a room and you ask the questions verbally. And people answer verbally so they hear what other people are saying, and those answers may trigger something that they didn't think about if they were doing paper and pencil. So we did that. And then we also did in-depth interviews, one-on-one interviews with people to find out what they were thinking about the future of Rotary. When all that was collected, we had 1 million pieces of data. 1 million. So then our job became pattern analysis. What that means is we had to sift through that information, and what we were really looking for were 2 important documents. One, the first document was our vision statement. Thanks, Tom. So we looked through all that information, and we put all these words that we found together and created a vision statement. This is the second one. The first one, we sent around the world to test it in Rotary languages and cultures. And it came back from Asia, and they said, absolutely no way. Because the original statement had something about Rotarians attempting the impossible. And the Asian Rotarian said, nope, nobody can do that. So we went back to the information, and that's where the phrase create lasting change came into play, which in my viewpoint is better. So this vision statement went around the world and was highly, highly accepted. Everybody really resonates when they read it. 2 parts of this statement speak to me personally. And the first one is that first word, together, because we can't do anything by ourselves. I can't do anything as president-elect by myself. These 2 can't do anything as director and director-elect by themselves. That one over there can't do anything. Tom can't do anything as an aide by himself. You can't do anything in your clubs by yourselves. Together, we have to do this together. The second part, the last 3 words, and in ourselves. Because this was the first public recognition that I can recall that Rotary recognizes that when we work on behalf of other people, when we're out there doing service, when we're changing people's lives, we're not just changing the lives for them, we're changing us. Right? I'm a much better person, if you will, than I was prior to Rotary because of the opportunities I've had to do that, to change lives. You know, I remember the very first time I went on a National Immunization Day and I held that first baby. Brought me to tears. I thought, this baby is gonna be walking somewhere in India because of what we've all done to support polio eradication. Very powerful. So Rotary changes us as well. The second thing we had to do with that 1 million pieces of data is go back to it and look at what were the ideas that were coming forward from everybody who had an opportunity to provide their opinion. And we ended up calling those our priorities. And this is the basis of the action plan. Now, it's important for me to tell you that although we're here today focusing on how to use the action plan for membership, the action plan can actually and will actually help clubs with other issues. We're in North America. Our issue is membership growth in North America. But in Asia, that's not the problem that they deal with. They have other issues that they're dealing with. The action plan is going to help all clubs around the world assess themselves and take a look at what are the things that we can deal with to help us move into that future. But today, our focus is going to be about membership. So, our very first priority, I'm going to talk about the priorities and what Rotary International did to move these priorities forward. And then later you're going to hear from other people on the panel talking about specifically what clubs can do. It's probably important for me at this point, no, I think there's another slide, but I'm going to do it here anyway. I want you to know that I have asked one of our incoming directors to serve as the world champion for the action plan, and she's sitting right there. So between Chris and all the action plan champions that she's been able to identify around the world, and then all those zone positions are looking for champions in the districts, and then all the districts are going to be looking for one person in every club to be the champion. We can't talk about this too much. You may wonder, why are you doing this? I'll tell you why, because the action plan came out in 2017. This is 2023. And I still talk to clubs who say, hey, that was really great. Where did that come from? Has that always been around? Yeah, it's been around for 6 years. But clubs don't know what to do with it. They don't know what it is, and they don't know what to do with it. So here's what Rotary did. When the plan was released in 2017, Rotary took a look at this first priority. This is the one that is suggesting to us that everything revolves around measurement. If we don't measure what we do in our community service and in our international service, we have no way to tell our story. We have no way to do that. It's important for us to look at how we position all the work that we do. There are two stories that I always tell here. These guys are going to get tired of me telling it because they've heard it a zillion times. But we have two stories in Rotary that are very powerful indicators of impact. One a good story and one a not so good story. Okay? So let me start with a not so good story. How many were in Rotary when Ian Risley was president? And what did he ask us to do? Plant trees, and we did that. We planted trees for one member, every tree, in our club. We counted up all those numbers and we sent it off to Rotary, and that was the end of it. But you see, in impact, you start with input, output, outcome, and impact. We didn't take it far enough. We could have had our communities take a look at local, maybe community colleges where there were environmental programs, earth sciences programs, or colleges, universities, or even local organizations who were measuring soil erosion, and take a look at how did planting all those trees where they happen, how did it have an impact on soil erosion? Or CO2 in the atmosphere. What did planting all those trees do to help our planet? We didn't take it far enough. Now, Ian Risley is a fabulous environmentalist, and I hope now that we have a 7th area of focus, we still do that. Planting trees is such an easy thing for our Rotary and Rotaract clubs to do. But let's think about how can we measure the effectiveness of that activity. Now the good story. We've had a program in Rotary that from its beginning has had strong impact statements. And that's our program to eradicate polio. From the beginning, we've been able to say, when polio is eradicated, there will be X million number of children every year that will not get that crippling disease. We've been able to say, when polio is done, there will be X billions of US dollars that won't be spent on ancillary healthcare costs, like post-polio syndrome. That's the kind of statements, excuse me, that caught the attention of partners and donors and potential members. You know, when we started working on polio in the mid-80s, we had a handful of partners. We have more than a dozen now. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Gavi Vaccine Alliance and the World Health Organization, because they heard about the impact statement and said, we want to be a part of that. Those people are making history. When polio is gone, we want to be associated with what's happening there. And that's what Rotary embraced, the whole concept of bigger, more impact. You may recall that at one time we had something in our foundation called matching grants. You know, I did matching grants way back when. They were fantastic. You could take an amount of money and you could go build a well or you could do something, and that's great. However, 10 years later, somebody in your family goes to visit that village, and there's the well, and it's inoperable. It's rusted. There's a Rotary sign hanging because no sustainability was built in. Nobody knew how to take care of it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do those kinds of things. Those things make us feel good. That's the psychic income. But if we want to have impact in communities around the world, we want to make sure that what we do is sustainable. Once Rotary leaves, make sure that that magic continues to happen. So the foundation moved from matching grants to global grants, which have a higher threshold, which have sustainability built in. But then they said, you know, there's even more impact that we can have. And they created something called programs of scale. These are huge $2 million grants that really have a major impact on the area. The very first one was to get rid of malaria in, was it Zambia?
Yeah.
I have to remember that. I always want to call it another country. It was in Zambia. Think about that. Helping to get rid of malaria in an entire country. That's an impact statement. That's huge. That's really huge. So like our polio eradication, those kinds of programs are going to give us the public image messaging that positions us as an organization that has impact around the world. To bring this down to the lowest common denominator, this is like going on a diet. Okay, if you decide that you're going to go on a diet, you got to step on the scale to see where you start. And then you employ whatever you're going to do to lose weight or gain weight. Who in the hell does that? And then you do those things, and then when you're done, you get back on the scale to see, you measure it, did it work? So that's what impact is. That's what we want, you know, that messaging to flow down. Now, I mentioned our polio program and a couple of thoughts, leftover thoughts about that. That's a really hard sell in North America because we haven't seen polio in so long. So getting Rotarians to buy into donating is not easy. Worldwide, the figure is it 12%? 12% of Rotarians give to polio eradication. 12%. When I think that it costs $1.10 to immunize a child, that includes the vaccine, the carriers, the things you have to, $1.10. And there are Rotarians around the world who have never given anything. And it's a tough sell. But even though we haven't seen it in North America, I talked about post-polio syndrome. You know, where I live in Western Pennsylvania, we have a news station, KDKA, and one of the broadcast journalists had polio as a child, and he often spoke to our Rotary district. And the very first time we invited him, I was there, I remember, he ran up to the podium and he gave his presentation about having polio as a child. The second time he was invited, somebody walked with him up to the podium. The third time, he couldn't do it by himself at all. He had two people escort him to the podium. And he said, the reason I've had that escort is because I'm suffering from post-polio syndrome now. And my future includes a wheelchair. That's what we're protecting children from. So even though we haven't seen it in our countries, we want to protect children everywhere from that. And you know that message that our polio pioneers always talk about, you know, it's only a plane ride away. Well, 2 years ago, didn't we see that come true? When somebody from New York brought it back from Europe, and we had a case of polio in New York. And then they found the polio virus in the water system in New York. They found it in London. They found it some other place, I can't remember. So it is still a threat to North America, even if we haven't seen it. So I hope you get a chance to share that messaging with your clubs to help them understand, especially younger Rotarians, because they're like, what? What's polio? Because they haven't seen it, but it's still a threat. So I got way off target, but let me keep going. So the second priority is the priority that talks about expanding our reach. I get really excited when I talk to non-Rotary audiences, because one of the first things I say is, I am so proud of Rotary. We've had the same meeting model for 110 years, and we finally have changed. You know, for 110 years, we did the same thing. We met 4 times a month, we rang the bell, we took attendance, okay? But we've changed because the world changed, and we had to change too. And that makes people perk up, like, you've changed. And I talk about our COL, our Council on Legislation in 2016 that created new meeting models for us. E-clubs, satellite clubs, impact clubs, companion clubs, corporate clubs, all kinds of new models. Why is that important? That's important because if people have the hands and the heart to serve, there is a place in this organization for them. A perfect example is my own club. A year and a half ago, we had a discussion about, you know, we've been around for, at that time, I don't know, 50 some years. And every year, we were hovering around 35 members, 34, 37, 36, 35, we weren't growing. And we stepped back and said, okay, why aren't we growing? Well, number one, we were meeting Wednesday at noon. Who were we missing? Well, we were missing teachers who couldn't get away because they were in class. We were missing medical professionals who had patients. We were missing retailers who had customers coming in and out of their stores. No wonder we weren't growing. So the first thing we did was ask everybody in the club, what would you think if we changed our meeting? Everybody said, let's try it. So we meet now Wednesdays. instantly gained 3 members. Instantly, all right? We didn't stop there. So we started talking to the local Chamber of Commerce, and we started talking to, we have a young professionals organization, and we talked to the schools, and we're asking people, and we found that there were a group of people in our community who wanted to serve, but they didn't want to come to any meeting. And so we went, satellite, impact, let's try it. So we have an impact group. Impact is the satellite model for those people who don't want to meet at all. They go out twice a month and they serve in the community. They work at the food bank, or they go to the senior center, or they do some kind of service. And then if they want to go out and, you know, have a soda or whatever, that's fine. Now, we do invite them to our weekly meetings, and they don't come. They don't want to go to meetings. We do invite them to our socials. They'll come there because we usually have beer. And then we know that because they're not going to meetings, they're not learning about Rotary. So every 8 weeks or so, we call it a PBR, a Pizza, Beer, and Rotary Night. And only 1 or 2 Rotarians go. And it's our job to just mix and mingle with them and just talk about Rotary. And the reason we do that was because right after we had our induction, we had some kind of foundation event. And I still have one of the medals, you know, the medallions. So I was wearing it, and I'm walking around, and this impact member comes up to me and he says, "Who's that bald guy, and why are you wearing it?" They don't even know who started Rotary. So our meetings with them are really basic information. It's kind of like RLI, you know, in a modified format. Now, why I'm telling you that story is because the night we did our first induction, we went from being a club of 34 to a club of 58 in one night. Okay. And every one of those members is still in our club. And they did not cannibalize our membership, just the opposite. Because we have that PBR, the members in the club are like, when's my turn? When can I go? My members are so excited about becoming mentors to that group of young people who want, and not all young, they're different ages, who want to be community servants, that they want to do it. It didn't cannibalize anybody. In fact, our research at Rotary says is that 85% of people who are in satellite clubs are first-time Rotarians. They didn't come from other clubs. So it works. It works. It works. We're getting ready for our 3rd induction of the impact model. So it really works. And that's our way of expanding our reach. So Rotary's role in all of this was, you know, looking at our COL, looking at our statements on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and really making Rotary more attractive to people so that people could take a look at us and say, you know, that's someplace I want to be. Under this umbrella is also the concept of the perception that we continue to fight. And that perception is that we are Romeo, rich old men eating out. I still hear it. I still look at us. Do we look like rich old men eating out? Of course not. We're not that. But we need to say that. So every opportunity that I get to be with non-Rotarian audiences, I talk about how different we are. And you know, there are places where DEI has become a political term, which is why I always talk about what it leads us to, and that's belonging. When we create diverse and inclusive and equitable environments, what we're really doing is making an atmosphere and environment that somebody's going to come into and say, I really belong here. I feel this is good. This is where I belong. That's what it's about. So this whole priority of expanding our reach, at RI level, we're looking at what are things that we can suggest to the Rotary world to help make us more attractive and more appealing. Let's go to the next one, Tom. The third one, enhancing participant engagement. This one when we talk about membership, is going to help us stop the bleed. It's about retention. But participant is a word that we chose intentionally, and it does not just mean Rotarian or Rotaractor. It means anybody that comes into the magic of Rotary. It could be parents of your youth exchange students. It could be beneficiaries of your community service projects or your international projects. Anybody that interacts with Rotary. So at the RI level, it means how to create systems and ideas and mechanisms that make us more centered around the people who participate with us. At the RI level, that means more work in terms of how we coordinate and work with our donor organizations, our partners, and people that engage with us. So you're going to hear more about what does this mean at the local level. But at RI through a variety of ways is helping us take a look at making the club experience more irresistible. So we will hear more about that. Let's go to the fourth one. This is the one that we thought was going to be the hardest. And oh good Lord, this was the easiest. 3 years ago, the way we did Rotary was ripped from us. We could not meet. We were in a pandemic. Yet every Rotary club around the world figured it out. Most went to some kind of technology and did hybrid meetings, or did online totally, or picked up their device and called each other and said, "Is there anything I can get you? Can I drop something off on your porch? Do you need anything?" And the foundation distributed a record amount of COVID relief grants. And what that signified was that Rotarians around the world have this DNA that says we want to make the world a better place. And we figured out how to do it. The world wanted to connect, and we did it. We figured it out. So at the RI level, this priority also is talking about us looking at how we're structured and how our governance works so that we can become more efficient. This ability to adapt means being more flexible. Just being more flexible. And it's asking us to look at, where'd you go, Tom? Okay. It's asking us to review how we're organized. When I started on the RI Board of Directors, I learned that there were 67 international committees. 67 international committees with international members flying into Evanston from all over the world. Are you kidding me? Do you know how expensive that is? So one of the first things Rotary did was take a look at redundancy. Do we need all these committees? One of the things we're good at in Rotary, maybe your club is like this, we're good at creating things, but not so good at taking them away. So Rotary said, no, we've got to sunset some of these. We've got to combine some. And I'm happy to say that we are way down on that number. What is it, Drew, now? Is it 12? Yeah, it's amazing the work that was done. It's about a dozen or so. All right. So what this priority is suggesting to us is two things: that we want to continue to be flexible. It also takes into consideration regional adaptability. And that's important in using the action plan because the way Rotary is done is different from country to country, from culture to culture, from district to district, and from club to club. All right, I'll give you an example. I've been in 3 Rotary clubs. My very first Rotary club was the Rotary Club of California, PA. A great club. I was in it for 10 years. Many of you know this, but I had the blessing of being in the club with past Rotary International President Chuck Keller, who was my mentor for all those years. I remember as an early Rotarian, I'd go to a meeting and the president would stand up and say, "The DG's coming after the COL, but before RILA." And I'd look at Chuck and say, "What the hell are they talking about?" Chuck would very patient, and he'd explain all of that to me, so I was really blessed. I loved it, but then I had a job change and I had to move. So I got into a second club. That club was not so active. By that time, I was a past district governor, so of course, you know, I'd stand up and I'd say, how about we try, and they would glaze over. And then I'd say, have we ever thought about, and they'd look down at their shoes. At best, it was a lunch bunch. As a past district governor, I wanted more. I wanted that irresistibility, you know, I wanted to do things. So, unlike most people, I knew that I had options. I could find another club or start one. So I went to the club next door. I literally, next door, next community. And that's the club I'm currently in. Dynamic. Dynamic. We do all kinds of things. It's fantastic. Where's Steven? Where's Steven? Is he still in the room? Steven, who went to my club? You mean you left already? Oh, there he is. Okay. So Steven had an opportunity to visit my club. And tell me what you thought. You tell the group what you told me.
Actually, I am not an AM club person, but I had a great time at your club. Dynamic, the people were so engaging. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Steve. And that's why I said it. But my point is, that club is right next door to the club I left. Different cultures, different ways of looking at things, and that's true in every one of our districts. So as we talk more today about the action plan, you have to think about your own club as well as the clubs in your districts, because regional adaptability doesn't just mean country to country. Sometimes it means within our own geography, and that's okay. That's okay. That's why we believe in it, and that's why we talk about it, and that's why there is no cookbook for the action plan. Your clubs are not going to get something from Rotary or Stephanie or anybody up here that says, do this and that, and that, and that, and you're going to be fine. It doesn't work that way. This has to be a very customized look at your own club. A very customized assessment of where you are and what can change. That's the way it's presented, that's the way it's delivered. Okay, let's go, Tom. Let's see what I'm missing. Okay, so, you know, part of leadership is reminding people about where we are. That's the here. And then talking about where we want to be. That's the there. And then talking about the path that we use to get there. That's the action plan. So here's where we are. You know, we're going to use the action plan. I talked about Chris is going to lead the charge, and she'll tell you more about that in a way. Go back to that picture. Tom took that picture. We were in Australia, and the district governor there, District 9800, had a community service event during the URI convention. It was a food packing, and all those people with the yellow vests are Rotarians, but everybody else is a non-Rotarian. She had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people come during the course of that day, and then many of them flooded her inbox with, how can I get involved? How can I join? Because they saw Rotary in action. And the reason I want to mention that is because I tell clubs all the time, do not ask people to come to a club meeting. They'll have the same experience I did, okay? The DGE is here, and we're going to run. We talk in Rotary East. They need to come and see Rotary in action. Invite them to a project. Invite them to a social. Let them see your club in action. And they have a much different opinion than, thanks, Tom. Let's go. Okay. And why we need this? I love Rotary, just like you do. Of course you love Rotary. You're here on a Saturday in December, 3 weeks before Christmas. I mean, oh my God, of course you love Rotary, okay? But I also know that I don't have 30 years in front of me to do Rotary. But I see some faces in this room that do. And I know that there are people out in our communities that want to serve. that want to do what we do. And we just need to get our clubs more focused on getting the message out, creating those kinds of situations that are irresistible. I'm sorry, Louise, I keep using that word because it's a good one. It has emotion. And we need to get that message out. When we do that, they will want to come. They will want to join us. So using the action plan is a way to help clubs look at and assess where they are and figure out what can we do differently. You know, I come from the world of education, and in my world, we call that continuous improvement. No matter how good you are, there's always something that you can look at and figure out, how can we do that just even a little bit better? And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about little increments. I never advocate, go in your club and just blow the whole thing up, and no, that's not what you want to do. No, I mean, we have traditions in our club. We have members who value the traditions that we have, but we also have to be flexible for those people coming in who may want to do things a little differently. And if our club doesn't work, then we need to direct them and say, well, let's get a group together and let's do a companion or a satellite. I remember having a young man join me at a Rotary Club meeting. He had been to one of our socials. He was intrigued. So he came to a meeting. So the president gets up, and the president rings a bell. We all jump up. We do the pledge. We sing. We do the four-way test. And then we sat down, and he leaned over to me, and he said, "Oh my God, that was Pavlovian." It is, but it's what our club members at that enjoyed. So that club was probably not one that was going to match what he was interested in. So he did end up in a Rotary Club in our district, but it was an after-hours club. They met at 5 o'clock. They had a glass of wine. They talked about stuff. They had the meeting at 6, and they did their community and international service, and off they went. So anyway, that's really why we're asking you to take a look at it. So this is just an overview of what I mentioned with Chris at the helm. She's going to be looking at regional champions that might be in the zone, but there may be more than one in the zone, paired zone, because of country and language and culture. It's really up to each region to identify who are these people, and then they're going to look for people in the district, and then those people will find folks in the club. Why is that important? Because we need somebody in every club. We need somebody in every club to talk about the action plan the way you're going to hear it being talked about today. I said this last night, I would love to get to 45,000 clubs, but it ain't going to happen. So we really need your help as Rotary leaders to get this message to our clubs. Because this is a tool that clubs can use. It's not the only tool, but it is one of the tools that clubs can use. And Chris is going to talk more about the toolkit a little bit later. And so, the message, my message is that we're a fabulous organization. We do fantastic things. We eradicate polio. We allow children to grow up and run through the streets of India and England and Mumbai and all over the place. We provide clean water. We plant trees. We empower girls. We promote mental health. But if we don't have members to do those things, they won't get done. We are a membership organization that does service. And it's pretty simple from my perspective. The more hands we have to do service, the more service we do. The less hands we have, the less we do. And you know what? The world needs us. The world needs us. The world is a mess. I can't turn my television or radio or device on any day and not hear something that Rotary can't help. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on. So much stuff. The world needs us. And so that's why we want to continue to take a look at where we are and figure out how we want to get into that thriving future. So that's what today is going to be about. Am I still talking or am I done?
Yeah, we're gonna play the video.
Oh, we're gonna play the video. This is good, okay. Let's play the video.
Real impact is built and change that's sustainable long after we have left the scene. As Rotary, how will we do it? We're encouraging clubs to focus their efforts on a few key areas rather than trying to do too many projects. Think about ways you can build on your community's key strengths, do some smart risk-taking, and look for areas where targeted, concentrated work can create a cascade of change. We're creating a culture of measurement in Rotary by measuring, tracking, and analyzing what we do. By using data and metrics, we can be smarter about what we need to continue doing, start doing, and stop doing. We all know the importance of data in our professional lives and how essential it's been to our progress in polio eradication. But it's also essential to the future of Rotary. Major funding agencies demand evidence and proof of impact. Young people, the future of Rotary, have grown up asking institutions and organizations for greater accountability and transparency. That's why Rotary is identifying consistent best practices for assessment and measurement. Rotary's action plan. What will our legacy be?
Okay, so I'm actually going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to take you through some other interesting activities this morning and talk a little bit more about impact. And she has a hands-on activity, so